Home, the gold. He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch.
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Move for the win. Team Canada. Garrett Woo!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo Wan, living in Kingston, Ontario. Joined by a special guest this week, Kelsey Hayden. Kelsey, what's up?
Not too much. I'm here coming in from Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, a little further on the East Coast, but things are good. Haven't been on the show for a while, but lots of good things happening in the meantime. So happy to be here.
Yeah. When I say I'm in the East Coast and Danny's in the West Coast, I know that probably made this joke before, but I know that offends people out where you are because you're the true East Coast. We're not. What do you consider
we're not
Toronto?
Even
then?
the true East. You're just in the middle. Like
Okay.
East Coast to me, I'm from Newfoundland, so East Coast to me is Newfoundland, and then Nova Scotia is like a good second. But when people in Ontario say they're in the East Coast, I'm like, you might be on the eastern side, but you're not on the East Coast.
Yeah, we don't face the same weather and just that kind of lifestyle,
Exactly.
So, you were here. I'm trying to remember, and maybe the loyal Huckin A fans will note this, but I think the last time we were on was in the summer, back when Danny was getting all her coaching and playing in. World Masters was a part of that, so you were helping us do a preview as well. I'm pretty sure of World Masters, which is fun. So. What have you been up to since that summer? You've probably been playing or disc golfing, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I haven't been disc golfing much actually. So I disc golfed a lot during the pandemic and when I was injured. But since then, I haven't actually disc golfed very much. But ultimate wise, it's been really good. Salty, which is the women's club team that I play on, I captained this past year. We went to Worlds, so that was really exciting. We had a great week there. I'm also one of the coordinators for Halifax Ultimate, so been organizing lots of leagues, playing in lots of leagues around here. That's been going great. I did go watch disc golf. I went and watched the Maple Hill tournament, and then I went and watched regionals as well, just the USAU regionals. So that was like a great week of watching disc sports. But yeah, it's been a good time. Lots of discs.
So you went all the way to Devon's, Massachusetts, is what you're telling me.
I did, yeah. So we drove. So a friend and I drove down, and we went and we watched Maple Hill for 2 days. So that was really cool. Disc golf.
DGPT tour or something, or like
it is.
DGPT
I think it's an elite
know.
series. Like it's the highest level of pro disc golf in that like circuit, I guess. Maple Hill is one of the most beautiful courses in the world. It's really close to Devon's. So yeah, we went down, we watched the pros for a couple of days, and then he's on Red Circus. So, and all of my friends are on Red Circus. So I went and joined up with the team and just watched for the weekend and kind of watched some of the other games as well, just because there's great ultimate at Northeast Regionals. So that was a super fun weekend.
Probably missing out on playing because I know Salty has been there multiple times. I know didn't attempt to go this year, I'm pretty sure.
No, took a break after Worlds. That was a big one. So we've had a longer off season, which has been really nice too.
Well, you started earlier than a lot of teams as well, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Did.
I think we had talked about this. The restrictions were lessening in certain parts of Canada. So you had a luxury that other teams haven't. So you deserve the rest here. Last question I'm going to ask you before we jump into the news is, what's it like watching a disc golf tournament? Because when you're watching it, with Joe Mez Pro, I don't dabble into that anymore. I did a little bit in the pandemic as well. But when you watch that, it goes to the lead card. You can see who's catching up, and you got the follow flight, and you did the whole drone thing over the hole. That's always fun, where you get to see what shots you need to hit it. So in person, it's probably a lot different.
It is a lot different, but it's way better than I expected. So I wasn't sure, especially because Maple Hill is a very forested course. So I was kind of wondering, I was like, how can this be spectator friendly, in a really forested area where you can't be in the way of the discs, you can't be in the sight line of the players. I was wondering how in the world is this going to be for a spectator? But it was actually really good. So you buy tickets. You can buy general admission tickets, or you can buy specific tickets to follow to have like a higher level where you're allowed to like cut through back alleys of the woods, basically. But basically, you have the option of you could sit on one hole and watch everybody play through that hole, or you could follow a specific card, or you could do a mix of both. And so my friends and I just kind of planned out a little bit like what cards were really interesting to us, who we really like as players. And then we follow those cards for a while. Then we would park ourselves like at a singular hole and just watch a bunch of groups come through. And we kind of just ran around the woods watching whatever we wanted. So it was really cool. Like, I would highly recommend if people do like watching disc golf on, on Jomez or on the Disc Golf Network or anything. If there's an event near you, I would highly recommend going because it was a really cool experience. And disc golf is at this funny stage, maybe similar to Ultimate, where it's definitely growing in popularity, but it's not crazy popular yet. So you do have opportunities to just like chat with the pros and like, they're just like eating their lunch before they go play their round. And you're just like sitting there and like Calvin Heimberg is 10 feet away from you. So it's pretty cool, like, to just get to really interact with them. And it still feels like small and niche. But, it's getting bigger. So I think eventually if it continues to grow, it might not be quite like that. So anyways, I thought it was a really cool experience. I was really happy with it.
Was Brody Smith there? Because that's my main.
He was.
That's my main go-to. I know that might be controversial for some people,
Yeah.
but I watched Brody play Ultimate a little bit, and he has dwelled into the disc golf and has been pretty successful, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I don't
quickly.
think he's like top 10 or anything, but he's definitely up there as a recognizable name, and
yep.
And he was there. So
yeah,
you got
he
to see
was.
him.
Yeah, pretty much all the big pros were there. Like I said, it's I think an elite series event. So it's one of the kind of like main events of the summer that I think a lot of people really look forward to, and a lot of the pros cite it as like their favorite event. So yeah, all the big names were there. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, we're gonna shift to the news now because otherwise we're gonna turn into a disc golf podcast. You can listen to that one on one of Ultiworld's family of podcasts, there, which Charlie hosts. If you want to do that, the upshot. But now we're gonna jump into the news.
We now have breaking news.
So one of the cool things when Theo and I were talking about the news as of recently that we noticed was that Ultimate Canada posted a big 2023 calendar of events. And so this is cool for a couple of reasons. One, it's just nice to see everything laid out. It's really cool to see how full the calendar is of how many big Ultimate events are happening this year. And so it's laid out really nicely in that it says, for the Canadian players or coaches who are interested in these events, it's, here's when the player applications will be, or here's when the coaching will be selected and things like that. So they've laid out that information really well. Here's when the prospect camps will be. Here's when, the tryouts and all of that is. So they've laid that out really clearly. There's some pretty fun events coming up, obviously. So for example, first of all, there's the U24 Worlds in July, which we'll obviously talk about. I'm sure the podcast will talk about a lot more as it comes up. There's also Beach Worlds that come up in October at kind of a interesting time.
It's a weird time for sure.
Yeah, it's the last couple of days of October. So by my guess, I think it will be a couple of days after USAU Club Nationals. It talks about the world tryouts because obviously this year for CUCs, it's a qualifying year or like the opportunity. I don't even know exactly how it works, but the opportunity to like influence the Team Canada teams for the next year or however that's going to work. And so those tryouts will happen in the fall. Yeah, exactly. But all those tryouts will happen in the fall. So anyways, highly recommend if you're a Canadian player or coach or someone interested in any of that in terms of national teams or world's teams or national events, CUCs, C4UCs, all of that. This calendar is a really good kind of reference point for what to expect each month.
Yeah, it's it does say draft, so things could be subject to change. I like that for some of them there's no specific dates, so that just it's kind of like U20 trial is going to be around September, November, so keep your head out. Like if you're on any sort of Frisbee training program, start to taper off your workouts towards that time. But lots to see here, and kind of my first thought as I look at it is, lots of different events. some Worlds events happening. I think not as packed as we saw in 2022, but still a lot of events going on. And PAUC is happening as well, PAUC. So a bunch of Canadian teams will be going to that. So great job, Ultimate Canada, for getting the calendar out. We love that, and seeing the different events are happening. Any other thoughts, Kelsey, on this calendar before we move to some more news?
No, I don't think so. I'm happy it's there. It's good for planning for everybody. I'm excited to see all these things kind of unfold.
Yeah, and the first event that we have, two events I'm going to talk about because it is kind of news, is actually happening in my neck of the woods in Kingston, Ontario. So first one's another Canadian Eastern Indoor University Series, the aptly named CEIUS tournament. It's the second one. It's happening in Kingston, Ontario, the 14th to 15th. And then after that, there's one in Brampton. And then sort of you have to qualify for the big event there that's happening in, I guess, Guelph/Waterloo in the middle of March. So obviously for teams out in the true East Coast, or the teams out in the true West Coast, they won't really be attending this. But for a lot of the teams here in Ontario, this is a pretty big chance for teams to get some reps in and continue practicing, as well as giving opportunities. So a lot of squads, for people that don't know, will send like 3 or 4 teams. A lot will send 3. So you'll have like an A and B team that's actually made up of the A team outdoor players, but in indoor there's less spots. So they just split them up and give people a lot of reps. So highly recommend, if you're a university team, to go out to these tournaments. That's that event happening. And then we have O4UC. So you got to do well in that tournament to qualify for C4UC there, which is on the calendar. So in Oshawa, Ontario, Durham region, you can check that out. So those are some events on the horizon.
Yeah. And then another big thing out of Ultimate Canada that I think they announced either today or yesterday, anyways, this week for sure, they announced that their official apparel partner is now Be Ultimate. So that's pretty exciting. That's pretty cool. So Be Ultimate has really nice kits, really nice gear. So it's exciting. Ultimate Canada is going to partner with them. So we'll see what kind of stuff they come out with for the Team Canada teams in the upcoming cycles.
Yeah, all for from what it sounded like on the press release, 2023 and 2024. So outfitting the kits for that, and also the major tournaments happening in Canada. Normally, we see a different brand there, so get a little different brand out there, outfitting Team Canada in these events. And then on top of that, Ultimate Canada. Maybe you were listening to last week's podcast with Danny and I. Probably not, because this is probably in the works for a while. But one of my wish lists was getting a little bit more media involvement and like kind of increasing that. So. Fun fact for you, I had 2 people send me this job posting at the exact same time, Danny being one of them. So it's all telepathic there. But they're hiring a communications manager. So if you're interested in that, getting into communications for a national governing body, highly recommend you apply. Good experience. Kevin Underhill has been part of that, Becky Thompson as well. So a lot of people have gone in that role and thrived and moved on to other things as well, and chance for you to impact the Ultimate community. It says you have to be sort of bilingual, but as someone who works in a place where it is bilingual and I do not speak French, there are ways to get around that, is all I'm saying.
But it is a huge asset to be bilingual.
Yes, absolutely. But it's a little bit of a crutch sometimes, because the full disclosure here, I have to send all my things to translation services. So
which is not cheap.
Well, it's
I know you're not paying for it, but the people who are, I work for the government, and translation services are very expensive.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many words add up to some costs here. But just making sure that, if you have French, apply. If you don't have French, still apply. So that's our news for now. We're going to jump in. We have 2 main events today. One is we're going to talk about sponsorships at Ultimate. So something Kelsey had talked about with me off air long time ago, months ago before Worlds, was the fact that her team had a lot of sponsorship dollars come in through different avenues, and were able to fund a lot of their season. So she'll talk about that. And then we're going to jump into some predictions for 2023. I don't know if we're going to be as bold as some of the other podcasts like to do their bold predicts. Some of them will be lukewarm. I'll throw a couple ridiculous ones in there. But join us for those 2 main events after the break.
Hey, this is Jocelyn Lee from the University of Toronto. your 2022 Huckin D1 College Women's Offensive Player of the Year. And you're listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, main event time. We got main event number 1 here. We're going to talk to Kelsey about some sponsorship things, because that's something we talked about on the wish list that I had last week was Ultimate Canada getting a sponsor, but in this situation, it's a team getting a sponsorship. So Kelsey had mentioned in the open there, been a captain for Salty, a team out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, women's team. So I don't think you funded your whole season, but a lot of the season was funded through sponsorships, or some of it. So can you talk us through that experience? You can give out dollar figures if you can. If you can't, that's fine. Just like kind of the agreement, things like that, what businesses you worked with. Give us the down low.
Yeah. So basically when we secured our bid to Worlds, and so myself and the other captains sat down and we started adding up all the different costs and to, because when we host tryouts, we want to be able to tell people like a realistic figure of what they can expect to pay for the season. And obviously Worlds comes with a huge price tag. The team fees and the player fees are really high. The travel, your accommodations are much higher because you're there for 9 days. And we just started to realize like, wow, this is really expensive. And so obviously, just like any other team, we were thinking, okay, let's figure out a way to raise some of those funds. And I think the most common way for an Ultimate Frisbee team is to do a lot of fundraising, which we did do some fundraising, but we decided to approach to see if we could get some sponsorships. They're a really like effective way to kind of get more money with less time. Honestly, that's the appeal. So how we did that was we took our time and we created a really nice sponsorship letter. And in that sponsorship letter, we made sure that so we had a nice cover letter, and then the second page was just like a 1-page description of, who we are, what we do, what our goals were, what our accomplishments. We really highlighted that we were going to Worlds, and that was the first time that a women's team from Atlantic Canada was going to, Club Worlds like that. And then we listed out the sponsorship levels available. And we kind of just like shot for the moon with for our sponsorship levels. We weren't shy, because what we figured is that let's say what we want, and if someone is interested and they have a counter, well, that's fine. We can have that discussion. But what we did was we basically created like a tier, like 3 tiers of sponsorships, since we did like a bronze, silver, and gold. So we had bronze level was $500. Silver, I think, was $1,500 or $1,000. It was either $1,000 or $1,500, and then gold was $2,000. So that was like, the big one. And so what we did was for each level, we offered a few things on our end, basically. Obviously, the sponsors are not going to like make their money back. This is like they're sponsoring us; they're being kind. But what we did offer them is space for their logo on our jersey for a gold level sponsorship. We offered, certain numbers of social media posts for each level. We offered for certain levels, we would run clinics where we would like kind of label the clinic or title the clinic after the sponsor's name and kind of advertise it that way. And yeah, so we try to come up with really creative, fun social media posts when we did those. And then basically, we approached local businesses and companies, mostly ones that we had a connection with, whether it be someone on the team worked for that company or knew somebody who worked at that company or was related to like what we were doing. We didn't just like shoot off, 500 emails or anything. And then we personalized each letter. So we would, put in the person's name and edit it slightly if it made sense, and then save it as a PDF. And then we would send a personalized email as well. So we would generally get the team member who had the connection to send the email so that it was coming from a person and it, wasn't just a generic like BCC of 200 names. So we had a ton of success, basically. We got to fund a lot of different aspects of our season. I made a quick note of, all the different things that we covered fully with sponsorship money. And so that included all of our grass and turf costs. And so, as you mentioned earlier, we started practicing in March last year, which means out here, obviously, we weren't going to practice outside in March. So our first 2.5 months were all indoor turf practices. very expensive. So, all of our turf and grass costs were covered, all of the costs associated with our coach. So all of his travel, accommodations, everything like that. All of our registered competitive athlete fees for Ultimate Canada were covered because you need that in order for them to check your roster for Worlds. Our training camps, our team socials, the team fees for our prep tournaments. We gave some gifts to our donors. We did some other like fun little team things. We covered some accommodation costs at tournaments. We did a donation to a Cincinnati organization that supports trans youth that a bunch of other Canadian women's teams also donated to who attended Worlds. And then we also had a bunch of, small miscellaneous costs throughout the season that all got covered by our sponsorship money. So, if you add all of that up, that was a huge savings for every player on the team, like hundreds of dollars of savings for every player on the team. So it was pretty cool. Like it was pretty amazing. And like I said, we practiced starting in March, and we kind of worked on the sponsorship stuff before our practices started. So by the time it was our first practice, we could like tell the team how many dollars we had sponsored and how much was going to be covered. And it was really exciting. Like it was very fun to celebrate together. And it was one of those things that I think some of the new players, the rookies this year, probably don't realize like just how much money they saved because they're not used to the expenses of an ultimate season. But the veterans were like, whoa, this is really nice. So yeah, it was a really, really effective process, I will say.
Hopefully those listening to this right now are just as excited as Kelsey is, because you could hear just her energy from this process. So really exciting that you were able to nail down a lot of the costs for your team and just kind of save them a lot, right? So that they could do this for longer, hopefully. So is this something that I don't want you to speak for the process for next year, or this coming season, but is this something that you see your team doing like in the future? Like, have other sponsors that were part of the 2022 season, have they said they got positive feedback, they want to come back? Like, what's happened like?
Yeah. So I'm not a captain for this season, but I'm obviously still, friends with the captains, and we've chatted about it. And we chatted with the sponsors last year, just kind of about, are you thinking this is a 1 year or this is a multi-year? And we didn't, get anybody to commit one way or the other, but we definitely got feedback from people that, yeah, we'd like to keep supporting you. Not everybody, like I think some people probably were a one-time sponsorship because of the like exceptional opportunity we had last year. But I do think there are some companies that we still work with in other ways that I think will continue to support at different levels. I'm sure it'll depend on a lot of things for those companies, but it's seeking out sponsorships. The worst thing that can happen is that somebody says no. So there's really no downside to asking and having the conversation. We were hoping to get some. We never dreamed that we would get as much as we did. We were really grateful and really lucky. But I would strongly recommend anybody do it, because the worst is that they just won't answer you or they'll say no.
Yeah, we'll insert the "you miss 100% of the shots you don't take" quote there.
Exactly.
But that sounds
Michael
cool.
Scott and Salty.
There you go. And you said the catalyst was sort of seeing how high the bid fees work and people working together. So that's how you get it started. And people might be saying, "Oh, why are we talking about this in the first episode of January?" But you got to start planning now, because season's coming around the corner. So
yeah,
you got to start planning this kind of stuff now.
We sent sponsorship letters in January, I'm pretty sure, of last year, January and February. Because the other thing you have to think about is how many different teams do things over the summer for lots of sports, and how many, competing requests are going to come into these companies. And we figured, January and February is probably not a high time for people getting these requests. And so perhaps that would also be advantageous, when I think that leading up to summer and leading up to Christmas, places get a lot of requests for donations and sponsorships and all of that kind of stuff. So we thought, well, maybe January, February might be a low time. That could also be on our side as well.
That's a selling point right there. But I don't want to paint it's all, cherries and rainbows, because there's got to be some setbacks, no? Like something getting in the way, or was it all rainbows on your end?
I mean, it was a really it was more effective and efficient than I expected. There were a lot of places we asked that said no. I'm not like every person we asked wasn't like, hell yeah, let me give you all my money. We asked many more places than we received sponsorships from. But you don't need anything you can get is a positive for the team. And the time it takes to write the sponsorship letter, that's a little bit of commitment of time, obviously, but it's nowhere near the same amount of time as planning and executing a huge fundraiser. So yeah, we got some no's, or we got some maybe next time. We also got some people feedback that hey, the pandemic's been going on. It's been a really difficult time. We like what you're doing. We want to support you, but we're not able to financially right now. And that's okay. We had one company that offered to give us energy bars and electrolytes to take to tournaments. That was amazing. That was a really cool opportunity as well. So not everyone's going to say yes, but that's fine. Those that do, you get to work with cool companies, and you get, like I said, to offset a lot of your costs.
So I will say there's a benefit to the communities and club teams that, are a little bit smaller, because if you go to your local business and and you're the main ultimate team in town, and there's not a lot of competing interests, it might be more difficult to be in a bigger city, but I think either way you should try and go for it. And so we're going to wrap up this part here, or main event number 1. Advice. This is the good stuff. So now someone's listened to this segment. They're like, hell yeah, I want sponsorships from my team. What's the advice you're going to give them to help them get there?
So in terms of the letter itself, I think you need to take the time to write a really genuine sponsorship letter. We were very honest in ours. This is a big opportunity for us. These are the costs. We set out, here's what the team fees cost. Here what the player, these are the costs that we're facing. We also really emphasize that, this is a unique scenario where we're getting to go to Worlds. There will be more exposure for brands. We listed on Instagram and on Facebook, you can look at your analytics for your engagement, and we listed what our engagement was. We have this many followers. They're mostly based in Halifax. This percentage of them are between this age, and we aligned that for who we were talking to. So I think being really smart about your sponsorship letter is one. I also think personalizing your letters and emails is a big one, because you don't want to just be, like I said, blind CCing dozens of people. That's very easy to ignore. And then the other thing I think is that reach out to companies and businesses that align with your values and align with what you're doing. So we are reaching out to places that also, were in the sports realm, or in healthy living, or things that made sense with a women's ultimate team. So I think that really helped. We weren't just reaching out to an oil company because they have lots of money. We were reaching out to places that we had. If you know someone at an oil company, probably reach out to them. But we reached out to people that we had a connection with, that we shared values with, that we felt we would be happy to represent, and that they would be happy for us to represent them. And then the other thing I would say is that once you do have sponsorships, if you get them, have some fun with the social media and the content that you create. I think one thing that we kind of connected with our sponsors over the months of our season was they were like, oh, this is a fun post. That was a good one. Thanks for that. And they would share it on theirs. And each time they would share it on their socials, we'd get a couple more followers, and it was just a good back and forth. So, you want to foster a good relationship with a sponsor. It's not just a one-time transaction. Ideally, you create a partnership that you can hopefully both benefit from for years. But I would highly recommend teams try it out.
I will say, like you said, the worst thing that can happen is no. I was on a team where we got a sponsorship from a VR company, and it was on the back of our jerseys. And that was fun. I thought it was cool. I think we got a little bit of money out of it. It was a 1-year thing, but I've seen US club teams. I think Mixtape has this. I've seen club teams. If you look at the back of the jerseys, there's lots of
has a bunch on there. Yeah.
There's. This isn't just a thing that smaller teams do. Big teams in the United States are also doing this. So clearly they see that if we're playing in a sport where it's all player funded, there's got to be ways to maybe help offset that. So find your ways. You got to get the social media popping, and then you can do that. So Kelsey, really appreciate you talking about sponsorships. I wanted you to talk about this for a while, so I know we had been back and forth about it. So any last thoughts before we jump over to main event number 2 after a quick break?
No, I think that's it. Except that if you want to see fun sponsored posts, go to at Salty Ultimate on Instagram, because that's where we posted all of our fun sponsored content.
Hey, anyone who plugs their socials, I'm a fan of, because that's always good. So go follow Salty Ultimate. Is it just at Salty Ultimate on Instagram? Is that right?
Yeah, keeping it simple.
Yeah, there you go. So go do that. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to do our predictions for 2023 after that.
Hey, it's Danny here.
Theo, too.
New year, new you.
We want to wish everyone a happy new year from the Huckin A podcast. Truly appreciate all the support, and we're excited for 2023.
We're still your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate.
All right, so now it's main event number 2. We're going to talk about 2023. We talked about how in the calendar, it's a big year, lots going on. So, we're taking some inspo, other podcasts, Deep Look, you throw a little bold predicts. I don't know if we're going to be as hot and spicy as some of the others. I kind of want a lot of mine to come true, so I didn't want to go like too far off the path. But is there a place, maybe you can, Kelsey, you can start with your most, which one you think most likely will happen? So like kind of your like safe pick before we go into like the maybe not so safe.
Sure. I think most of my CUC predictions are probably relatively safe. So I tried to predict the winners of the Open and the Women's Division. So my guess for the 2023 CUC Open Division winner is Furious.
Oh, spicy!
I don't think it's that spicy.
No, but there's some competing teams.
For
Furious
sure,
didn't
but
make
I mean,
USA
I think
Nats. Go did. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but like one of like 3 to 4 teams is not that crazy of a pick.
Sure.
And then for women's, even less crazier, I think that Sixers is going to win again.
Yeah, Danny not here to defend herself, so or defend the team, but
I think Sixers are just getting better.
Yeah.
And I think Traffic are really good, but I don't think that they can top Sixers at this point. In like that level of tournament where both teams are going to be fully going for it.
So I'll give my prediction for CUC, and I'm not starting with one that is like a lock. I'm going to go a little bold here. Fierce and Goat, you're going to maybe feel a little bit of shade in about a second, but I'm going to predict that Mephisto. I was high on them in 2021 when they made all the way to the final. They did not have a good season last year. I think they would be the first to admit that. Flaming
they
out
were not at US regionals.
Yes, they lost out to the great named Tire Biz Frizz. So Tire Biz Frizz dashed the dreams along with Manic as well of Mephisto. But I'm going to predict Mephisto makes the final. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but I'm going to say they're going to make the finals of CUC in the Open Division. I know I'm going to have some people come at me about that, but I'm going to go a little bold on that one. They're going to make it to the final. They're going to have a big year, 2023.
I like that because A, we know Mephisto's a good team, but B, now they really have something to prove. Ending a season that way is only going to be like fuel to your fire the next year. So there's nothing stronger than like a spiteful revenge team. So I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Open. I'm gonna go USAU now. Like,
sure,
we went with your kind of safe pick. I'm gonna go with my. Now I'm gonna give some good news. I think there's gonna be an Open team out of Canada, so it could be Mephisto, could be Go, could be Fierce, could be another team. Probably one of those three. That's going to make the quarters. It hasn't happened recently from what I remember, making quarters of USAUs. So that is my prediction. One of them is going to step up and make it. And then along with that, I'm going to predict Red Flag. You had a good season, and I think that's going to continue. So I'm going to predict you're actually going to make the semifinals. I'm throwing stuff on the board here. This is the kind of episode. So you're going to make the semifinals. I know. They were put in a very interesting position this year with that like point differential. If they had just won a game a certain way, they would have got a bye to the quarters and like been vibing and cruising. So I think a lot of them, they are getting that some of them were U20, but now they're going to get that U24 experience, right? Mikiko Hashi, Koji Suzuki being two of them. They're already going to build off of what they had. Hopefully they go to CUC and ramp up for USAU. So I'm going to predict that. And along with that, I'm giving more Vancouver love right now. And I'm going to say UBC. I commentated your quarterfinals game last year. Oh, so close. Pretty close against UNC. It was a joy to commentate. And so this year you're going to break through. You got these TC players. You got Proby at the helm. Come on. So they're also going to make semifinals.
I love that.
So some of these are like you kind of hope that they happen too, but that's where I'm going with those ones.
So I only made, I think, one USAU related prediction when I was jotting these down. And it, we both can't be right. I'll say that. My prediction was that no Canadian mixed team makes USAU nationals.
I mean, there's only one team that's made it since 2013. So another safe pick, but hey, you're throwing a little shade at the red flag. They're going to be upset about that.
But here's my argument for this. Is that I think that on years when there's more on the line for CUCs, teams kind of go all in for CUCs more than for fall series, and no teams more than mixed teams. I feel like mixed teams pop up during these years, and other people, come to the mixed division for those years. And so I just think that's going to change the landscape of the mixed division a little bit this year. And then, I don't know that fall series will necessarily be the priority for mixed teams this summer. I could be totally wrong, but that's kind of what I was thinking. The Northeast region, which, that's where I think red flag comes. Oh, no, they're not in the Northeast. Okay, interesting.
Northwest. You're thinking Union's in the Northeast.
I was, yes. Anyway, so I think that the mixed landscape will be changed enough this year that it might be really challenging. It'll depend on the number of bids too, obviously. But that was my prediction that really counters your prediction.
I like it. And for those who don't know, this year is not going to be like the same for CUC where 2019 got some epic finals in there, first of all. But like that Goat Furious final, epic classic. Clayton Howlett was on the call. I believe it was Bellevon's too. Great. It's just a great game. Anyways. The winner of that made up most of the team in the selection committee. It's different this year where a certain percentage has to play CUC. It's a different rule.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still going to impact where players from Red Flag or Union or whatever mixed team still going to have to play. And they might not have to play. They don't have to play in the mixed division. I think you can play Masters too and still qualify to try out for the senior team. But I like your point. I'm going to stick with USA Club for my last one. This person got a lot of love from, I believe, Keith Rayner. So Keith, give you a shout out there. But I think this person's going to make the podium of Ultiworld's Club Defensive Player of the Year, and that's going to be the super athletic. And you've seen some highlights. I think it made it to number 3 on our on Ultiworld's top 10 plays. So Alyssa Mason, I'm predicting, is going to get on the podium or perhaps even win it this year. So that means that Sixers is going to have to have a big fall series once again. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people know that name now, and playing World Games helps with that. And then also making some highlight reel plays against Molly Brown helps with that as well.
Yeah, hard to argue that one. That if her season this year continues on the trajectory that her past few seasons, where she's just getting better and better, and defensively she's a powerhouse, but I feel like also she's really developed her offensive game. So after the turn, she's like a really big impact player. I really see that happening. I do have a kind of related one that I didn't categorize as USAU, but it is about a Sixers player. And it's a positive one again. So we all know that, this past year, I would say that Britt DeSantos had like a phenomenal season, to say the least. And I have no doubt at all that she will have another phenomenal season. But someone who had a slightly quieter season was still incredibly important to the team on the field, but I think will have an even better season, more similar to their 2019 impact, is Kimura. I think Lauren Kimura, this is not a hot take to say that she's going to have a commanding year, but in 2019, she was like the person on Sixers, and I believe won Offensive Player of the Year for Ultiworld in 2019. And I anticipate that she'll have a similar level season. And so if you can imagine who we've talked about so far, Kimura, DeSantos, and Mason having the seasons that we hope, that's really, really good.
We're giving some Toronto love here. No secret that I am from there, but
I'm not, so there's no bias
Kelsey
here.
is not, but I'm going to throw some more love to Toronto. We're going to go AUDL for one prediction.
Sure.
Throw a little AUDL. No Ottawa Outlaws, RIP to them, but there is still the Rush and Montreal Royale. So this person I believe should have won it last year. Got snubbed, absolutely snubbed. I'm talking the metrics. They got snubbed. So this year, Philly Cheese Turner is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. There's going to be no doubt. He's going to blow up for Toronto once again, and he's going to get Defensive Player of the Year and get the award that he should have won this past year. I'm going to say that I think some of the AUDL award voting perhaps may have been influenced by the club season. So Cody Spicer had a great club season. Maybe that influences AUDL, the reactions there. So Phil, going to predict you win Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm predicting some defensive output from Toronto here.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on the AUDL, so I can't predict. I do have a question though. Do you think that with the fall of Ottawa Outlaws, do you think that that's going to benefit Toronto and Montreal? Do you think those teams will get better because of that?
Well, I think if we look geographically, Ottawa is a lot closer to Montreal. So maybe you'll see Montreal get a little infused with talent. I think both teams will get some people trying out. You look at some of the players on GOAT that have really stepped up. Like I'm talking James Lewis here. James Lewis really blew up in the AUDLs. I believe he had 50 goals in the season. And I think he scored like 10 because I was on the mic for that game. I think he scored like 10 or something like that to get to that on the last game of the year against Philadelphia.
Wow.
So he took that, channeled the season in the AUDL, brought it into club, was on the O-line for GOAT, played a pretty big role. So there is some benefit to that as well. Kelsey, where do you want to go next here? What division you want to go? You want to go to the World? I know you got some World predictions probably out there, right?
I do have a couple of U24 predictions, so we can go there.
Yeah, let's go to the World. I'm interested to see what you say. I'm going to abstain from that with Danny as my co-host. I will not make any
so just
predictions
me.
with World.
All right.
So
I have one.
It's all Kelsey Hayden from here.
I have one positive one and maybe one potentially not as positive one that I hope people prove me wrong. Exactly. So we'll start with the positive one. So looking at the rosters, the U24 rosters that were announced recently, I think this player on the open roster is going to have, I don't know if we can call it a breakout tournament because they made the team and they already play really good ultimate, but I think everybody's going to know his name after this tournament, and that's Martin Gallant. I think he's a New Brunswick kid.
East Coast love right there. I like it.
It is, but he's the real deal. So I think that after this tournament, people see him on the field, the things that he's capable of, and the talent he brings to a team. I think people are going to be like knocking on his door to get him to play on teams with them. So that's
he did really well in the junior U20s. I know he's on the U20 team, and then he was won the Rookie of the Year for our college award. So he's tearing it up and going to be a big name there. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I mean. So I don't know if I can say a breakout tournament since he's already clearly known.
No, but on the world stage,
but
on the U24s,
I think it's going to be a great week for him. So that's really exciting. And then this one might be a hot take, but like I said, please don't be insulted. Use it as motivation. I'm not totally confident that all of the Canadian U24 teams will end up on the podium. I don't know which won't, but I think that the world is getting really good at Ultimate. And I think there's a lot of good teams. And depending on, we saw it last year where if other teams practice more because they have smaller, like physically smaller countries where they can actually practice with each other more often. Obviously, Canada, we're advantaged in that we're big and geographically diverse, but that makes it really challenging to plan training camps and practices. And so I don't know that all the U24 teams will medal. But like I said, I hope I'm wrong.
For historical context here, to make sure we don't get fact-checked.
Right.
In 2019, the one team did not medal, so that was the mixed team. They came fifth. Open was second, women third. In 2018 in Australia, Open was fifth. Women came second, mixed third. So the last time all three teams podiumed, with Open getting a silver in a great game against the U.S. If you remember, that was produced by Sky Magazine. It's where Liam Grant really broke out as a commentator with a buttery biscuit. And then women and mixed finished third, respectively, and that was 2015. So that was the last time they all medaled. So I don't know. Yeah, you're hoping that you're proven wrong and they use it as fuel. But as you mentioned, a lot of the world is catching up. Danny and I have talked about this numerous times. So this is something that, we gotta be ready. I know the mixed team was putting some stuff on their socials that they were out there training, doing some different stuff. So they're ready to go. We love it. So that is, that's good stuff. Appreciate you, throwing yourself out there with a take that some people might not like. So that's good. I'm going to jump into, we talked about CUC, the senior division, but let's give some love to the Masters and Juniors. So we'll start with Masters. This team is going to win, is all I'm going to say. I'm going to predict this team to win. They're going to be angry because they did not get a chance to win last time because of the whole rain and lightning delay. They came all the way from Vancouver for a 2-day tournament, and they didn't get a chance to actually prove it on the field. So Forever Young, I'm going to predict that you're going to win in your hometown or home province, and you're going to take it all the way. So a lot of Vancouver love here, but I think that they're going to be very motivated. I would be pretty motivated if I was a team that kind of got snubbed the opportunity due to some weather, and obviously we just couldn't keep that tournament going. So that's where I'm going to go with my Masters pick. Do you have a Masters pick, or is it just
I do.
you got Masters.
Probably not a hot take, considering I'm predicting that Stello is going to win for Women's Masters. So I think they had a pretty hot season this past year. I think that, their performance at Worlds was so fun to watch and so cool to see them line up against some of those players. And from all accounts, they're just getting better and closer. So I think that they're gonna, if they go, I think that they will win this year again.
And here's to say though that it is in Vancouver, so maybe some, Danny, maybe you throw on a team from Vancouver and a women's team in Vancouver. You take some of the players from traffic that are Masters eligible. And then you also take some players maybe from like Remix who are like also eligible, or people that played for the team before that. And you make a team and try to compete against Stella. That'd be kind of fun. So
that would be fun.
I do like that. I'm going to go CUC Juniors here, and I'm going to say that there is I don't know who it's going to be, but there will be a repeat champion. So there were some great finals, got a chance to, or great tournaments for those teams. Clips really just showing their dominance in the girls division, and then a great win by Mofo there. So I know both teams did graduate some players, but you got some players coming back. So I'm going to predict one of those teams is going to win the tournament. And here's the thing, though. When I make these tournament picks later on, I'm going to have to remember and see this document to actually like stick with what I predicted all the way back in the first week of January.
True. I don't have any juniors predictions, but the last prediction I have is related to C4UC. So
I like it.
Yeah. So the 4-on-4 tournament, that will be the first weekend of April this year. And again, this is coming from some bias, but also from historical facts that I think an Atlantic Canadian team will finish on the podium.
Brunch Money, right? That's not the team?
Well, so I don't think Brunch Money specifically is going again, but I think there are some teams from Atlantic Canada going. The historical context is that, as far as I'm pretty sure, that every year that Brunch Money went, which was 3 years, they medaled. I think they got like silver, bronze, gold, silver, or something like that. It's a good name. Yeah. They've gotten their fair share of medal. But I think Atlantic Canada is very good at 4-on-4 ultimate, and I think that some teams will hopefully go. And I think that they'll perform really well.
I do not have a C4UC prediction. I have a CUUC prediction, and we love the shade. I talked about that last time. So maybe throwing a little bit more to one team, but I'm going to say that no teams are going to repeat for CUC and Div 1. So both Manitoba and McMaster are not going to win championships, but Nick McFadden, he won our offensive player and MVP, and I think he's going to, even though his team isn't going to win, he's going to repeat the second annual awards. He's going to repeat, have a big year once again, build off of what he did last year. So those are my that's my CUC pick. I got two like far-fetched, probably not going to happen picks.
Okay, let's hear them.
Well, one is some major Canadian tournament is going to have listened to our last week's podcast. So maybe it's No Borders, maybe it's like Jazz Fest, maybe it's like Flower Bowl, something. Brian Gissel, maybe you're listening. You're going to do this for Flower Bowl. But they're going to take my suggestion and do a non-traditional tournament rules to determine a champion. They're going to go Swiss draw. They're going to try something different. And they'll be like, hey, we listen to this podcast. We think this is a good idea, and we're going to try it. So it's not going to be at Nationals. I get it. But another tournament, someone is going to do it. That's one. And the other one is all the university players are very upset at what happened with the recent stripping of a title. They all revolt, and everyone just starts using illegal players. Ultimately, Canada can't keep up, and it's just chaos everywhere.
Everybody qualifies for the university division.
Everyone qualifies. Players just bring back, you know.
Me, a 32-year-old, suits up for Dal. I actually technically will be eligible if I went to Dal because I never played university. But
well, there you go. But I'm talking to legal players. Players that have played for longer. They're just going to come back. They're going to revolt. And it's just going to be full anarchy. So
wow, I hope that happens. I think that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it gives us a lot to talk about on the podcast, but unlikely to happen. But something we'll end this segment with is that, there's going to be a huge revolt there. But that was, I enjoyed doing that because it's fun to kind of look into the future, all these great events happening. Really excited for the year to come and what teams show up, what players kind of make another name for themselves. And Kelsey, hopefully you enjoyed this experience. Any final thoughts before, I do our socials plug. You plugged Salties earlier, but I'll do ours. But any final thoughts before we're going to sign off?
No, I think just use our predictions as motivation. Prove us wrong where we need to be proved wrong. And feel free to chirp us in months down the road if we're wrong about something. And obviously just hoping for success for Canadian players and teams. But at least for me, you're allowed to make fun if I'm wrong.
You might, I'm just going to say this right now, you might get your audio put into a video if all the teams do podium. So I'm just saying that
would be good.
You have to be ready for that.
I'm happy to be wrong about that one.
I mean, that's one of those, I want to be wrong so that it could happen. So I get it. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Danny will be back next week, so you can hear from Danny Proby then. Kelsey, I don't think this will be the last time the Huckin audience hears from you. I predict, my prediction is you're going to be on multiple podcasts to come. So
imagine I say no for the rest of time just so that you're wrong.
Yeah, just so that the math is the math lines up. Yeah, the math lines up. I like that. That's good, spiteful stuff. That's good. But give us a follow on socials, Huckin_A on Instagram. You can send us an email, huckin@ultiworld.com. You can do all that good stuff. Stay around if you're a subscriber, and if you're not, you should be. Lots of college content coming at you. A lot of tournaments Ultiworld's going to be at. So if you like College Ultimate and you're a Canadian team that wants to play in this series, which I always recommend, make sure you subscribe and you can get all those videos. But Kelsey is going to talk about her experience in the second edition of the Commentator's Corner. She was at Pro Champs, really jealous. I was working and was hearing your voice on the broadcast, really jealous that you were there in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we're going to talk to Kelsey about her experience there at Pro Champs. And if not, we'll see you next week.